Thank you for finding the NSC podcast on YouTube. To find links for our online hospitality security training, check out the video description below. Enjoy the Nightlife Security Podcast. You're listening to the Nightlife Security Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Black Diamond Radio. Visit blackdiamondradio.com. When Nightlife Security Consultants recommends radios to our clients, we recommend Black Diamond radios. Why? They're the best in the business. Simple as that. Tired of the high cost of replacing broken radios? Black Diamond Radio has an industry-leading 2-year warranty. If you can break a Black Diamond radio, they will replace it. No hassles, no questions. It's time to beef up your nightlife communications. The Black Diamond D452 radio is the most durable radio on the market. Black Diamond built this radio with hospitality nightlife in mind. Built for high noise environments, it's shock and water resistant. And it has a long-lasting battery. Your security team has a tough job. They need a tough radio. Need more than just radios? Black Diamond Radio is your one-stop shop. Radios, earpieces for competitor brands, silicone ear molds, foam ear molds, earpiece adapters, and much, much more. Just go to blackdiamondradio.com for all your radio needs. Black Diamond Radio's customer service is second to none. Got a question? Call Black Diamond Radio during regular business hours, and you'll always speak to a live customer representative ready to assist you. Get 10% off your order today. Just click on the Black Diamond Radio banner on the nightlifesecurity.com homepage or on our podcast show notes. Make sure to use promo code NIGHTLIFE7. That's NIGHTLIFE and the number 7 and order today. Welcome to the Nightlife Security Podcast, a professional resource for the nightlife security industry. Whether you're a hospitality security professional, owner, or operator, this is the podcast for you. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain. Let's get started. Welcome to the Nightclub Security Podcast. This is your host, Manny Marquez. We are in studio and have with us on the line Rick Bistline with us. Rick Bistline is a longtime friend and advisor of NSC. He also has a 20-year career in law enforcement, currently retired. Rick also assists us with expert witness work, and his background is in academic research focused on law enforcement and security management principles. Rick, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Manny. How's it going?
Not too bad. Where are you in the U.S. right now?
I'm over in Phoenix, where it is 109 degrees today.
We are a sweltering 70 degrees here in San Diego with a light breeze, which means that if you're in the sun, it's a little warm. If you're in the shade, it's just a little bit cold.
That's great.
So we suffer with you, my friend.
Thank you.
So Rick, today we have you with us on our podcast, and what we're going to be talking about, and I think it's an important topic, especially during this time. You know, we're in a post-COVID world. There's many challenges for hospitality operators. One of those challenges is hiring. Across the board, every single one of our clients is facing this challenge of finding qualified personnel to work in their security operations. And I think that the landscape and the industry has changed quite a bit since COVID and the reopening and as companies gear back up. So we wanted to pick your brain, get your insight into maybe some things or things that our listeners and our clients and our fellow operators can think about and maybe take away to help them with essentially what's for a lot of them a crisis when it comes to hiring. And you know, one of the things I think that's happening as well is we're not vetting closely as we used to because of the labor pool has been dried up, so to speak. And so I wanted to pick your brain on those topics. One of the questions I have for you is, what are the possible results if we don't hire properly? If we do poor hiring, what are some consequences of that?
Well, I think there's two sides of the coin here, Manny. With regard to hiring in general, it doesn't matter if it's law enforcement, it doesn't matter if it's a bar, a nightclub, or a hotel, or 7-Eleven. Hiring the right people for your team, in this particular case, security teams, which are really critical staff, is critical for the organization. You're hiring people to do a job to really focus on customer service first and foremost, but keeping people safe in the venue. And hiring the right people will get you that high quality customer service you're looking for. But on the flip side, on the other side of the coin, improper hiring can lead to disastrous consequences where being the biggest organizational risk and greatest liability are the people that you hire, because human resource is the biggest piece of the puzzle for any business whatsoever, but particularly bars and nightclubs, because we rely on customer service so heavily.
Yeah, and I think what tends to happen in hospitality is your security personnel are kind of an afterthought. I think organizations put a lot of effort into making sure we have the right look of our employees. Oftentimes it's the servers, the bartenders, the hostess, the VIP hosts who get that attention in vetting. And the security team is kind of, in several ways, the department that's the stepchild of the organization. And so we don't really put the same effort into finding the right people, which, in my opinion, is probably one area where you should be spending the most time, because with a security operation, that's where most of your liability lies, right? What are some of the potential costs in hiring the wrong person, you think?
There's numerous. There's three big liabilities we talk about, right? Are criminal, administrative, and then civil. All three of those apply when hiring the wrong person for the job, because administratively, you could be hiring somebody that doesn't have the right credentialing. For example, in California, where you're required to have a license to work as a security guard in a bar. If you don't have said license, you can be administratively liable. On the same vein, you can be criminally liable for not having people on your staff that are properly licensed. And this is popping up all over the country too. This isn't just California. This is happening in Philadelphia. It's, I believe, in New Orleans, and there's others. The state of Oklahoma is actually looking at it to do it like California did as well. So there's other places that are considering this. And then finally, the administrative liability, or the civil liability. Sorry, the civil liability piece is huge, because the cost to hire somebody is underwhelming compared to the cost against getting sued and losing money. You pay out the insurance costs, or you get sued for a large amount of money because a security guard used excessive force on a customer, or a security guard stole from you, or any number of things. But primarily it's you're hiring somebody who invokes injury or hurts somebody or does something wrong that's egregious that can lead to any one of those liabilities. But primarily the civil liability piece is where we're really worried about, because we're going to lose money in the long run. And I've been in so many cases recently over the past couple of years on Expert Witness, especially through COVID. Like you said before, they're trying to hire people ad hoc, and they're not following good standard practices. And by doing so, they're hiring people off the street who are injuring patrons or using excessive force, and these bars are getting sued for it. And that's the outcome. You lose money, and you're going to, some of them end up closing. So they have that to consider as well.
When you're talking about the expert witness work, one of the things that we see in these court cases is they normally will look at 5 different areas of your operation, right? So, and you know these, but for the audience, one of the very first thing that they're going to be looking at is your hiring practices, right? And so how do you hire, and what does that look like compared to what we would call the industry standard? So imagine that we hire a guard, and our process is, well, we're expecting a busy weekend. Guard Billy has a friend he plays football with. He can work that weekend. So let's throw a t-shirt on him. Let's put him at the front door, and we got ourselves a security guard. Versus the practice of actually properly vetting, having a job description, having a proper interview process, having background checks in place, having adequate training when we put these people on board. That's the difference that will show up in these civil cases. And depending on where you are on that, from the very least amount of time that you spend to hire a guard to the very, a very thorough process, that's going to become either aggravating or a mitigating factor in these cases. And oftentimes that determines, or will help determine, the settlement in some of these cases, right? It's really important for people to spend some time thinking about exactly how are we recruiting and how are we hiring, what does that look like? Rick, what in your mind, when it comes to security, hospitality, what are the characteristics that we're looking for that ideal candidate? What does a good security candidate look like to you?
Well, I think that there's a couple pieces. And one point I want to add to what you just said too, Manny, is think about it this way. We're running a business. At the end of the day, an entrepreneur, you're running a bar, you're running a business. Human resources, HR is hard, but it's a part of the job. And you've got to have policies, practices that are in place to vet these people, to have a process to select them. Don't just hire them, throw Billy's brother who plays semi-professional baseball. Hey, he's in town. We need somebody to work. Let me throw a shirt on him and bring him in. Same concept and same example you gave. But you've got to have those policies in place. And to your question, some of the characteristics, I think it really comes down to what kind of bar, what's your mission, what's your governance, what are some of the things that you're required to do as a bar owner in your city and or your state and your locality to hire these people. That's first and foremost. You've got to have those things in place to consider those. It really comes down to your screening process. So, what are you looking for? And again, there's a lot of best practices out there, and we harp on them. Like you said, there's the 5 things people often get sued for, and we offer our best practice solution around those. And this is the same across the board in any security best practice that people are using, whether you be in a hotel, whether you're a mall, whether you're a security guard company. They have practices and policies in place for screening these people and bringing them in. And it really comes down to, what are you looking for? What kind of person are you looking for? You want to really focus on customer service aspect, I think, first and foremost, in any one of those positions. So that's the number one characteristic. Do you have somebody that knows how to talk to people? Do you have somebody that has a sense of humor? Do you have somebody that's not rigid, just stands there and be like, oh yeah, grunts and moans, or plays football? Just because they play football doesn't mean that they should be a bouncer or a security guard at a club. Those days are gone. And that's a reality of the world we live in. And those are the type of people that you put in those shirts and you put them on the front door. They get somebody that comes in drunk and they're going to bounce them and they're going to crack their head side of the roadway and end up getting sued. So some of the other characteristics I think are important. That customer service piece for sure is, what kind of temperance do they have? Their temperament. Even education. I think education is important because it teaches you how to talk to people. But even then, do they have experience in dealing with drunks, intoxicated people, but we'll call a drunk, a duck, a duck. Do they have experience in that field? Have they dealt with these people before? Do they have any background whatsoever in working in a bar? And that's not necessarily a qualification per se, but you should have some idea of what you're getting yourself into to hire these people. So I think some of those are really important, but the most important thing to me is, what level of customer service do they have? What's their demeanor? How do they behave? Because the behavior is really what drives how people operate and do their job in any position, anywhere. And if you hire the right person, you're looking for the right behaviors, and you're screening them in the right way, you're going to see that right off the bat, whether or not you want to hire them or not.
One of the things that when I have a conversation with clients and like, hey, Manny, we're just having a hell of a time finding people to work on the team. One of the first things that I tell them is to start thinking outside the box. And what I mean by that is I think that most people have a predetermined idea of what a security guard looks like. And so oftentimes we're thinking about the big burly guy with the tight t-shirt and the muscles showing, and he's maybe got some sort of athletic or MMA background, which is all fine and good when you need. Size is nice when you need it, but when I would assemble teams or hire for security, I would often think about the whole dynamic of the team, and then I'd also consider looking areas outside. So give me somebody with some good life experience. Maybe he's on the smaller side, he or she's on the smaller side, but they're good communicators. I know we're going to talk a little bit down the line here about women in the field, but women are fantastic candidates for a security team. And I also think of it as a total, right? Like, not everybody can be quarterback. Not everybody can be a running back. We need people in all different areas or positions with different skill sets to have a nice rounded out security team. One of the examples that we give in training is, on one of my teams, a guy named Errol that worked with us, and he was what I called the drunk whisperer. He was good talking to drunk people. He just had a demeanor and an energy about him in which he was able to talk to drunk people and get them to comply, or at least sit there and listen to them complain. And that's how we used him. So I think people just need to start thinking outside the box. We need to start opening up who would be an eligible candidate, because as the labor market shrinks or as it stays constricted and as we have a harder time finding people, we have to kind of open up what is going to be a good candidate for a security position. Rick, another question I had for you was, what do you think some of the results are, Rick, when sound hiring practices are overlooked?
Well, you get yourself in a trick bag, like we talked about already, is, when they overlook the basic HR practice where you're conducting detailed background checks, when you're looking through, it doesn't have to be as detailed as law enforcement or credit history, DMV records, but criminal history is important. When you overlook those things, you're going to get those people that are going to cause you problems. No matter how, and let me back up a second. So no matter how hard you vet, no matter how great your policies and procedures and practices are in place to hire people, this goes for any business across the board. And there's lots of research and lots of information out there to support this. You're always going to get, you can't vet everybody to 100%, right? You're never going to get the best person for the job. It's just not going to happen. But the more you can do, the better you can do. And as long as you put forth a good faith effort, you do the standards, you have a standard in place, you know who you're looking for, you know what kind of person you're trying to hire, again, for the customer service realm, because that's what we do. We are in customer service, period. And that's the focus. And if you overlook that stuff, you may get those one-offs that happen, and that happens in life. You move on, you fix the problem, and you put a good faith effort forward, and you go on and find somebody else. But when you overlook it, you're going to end up having police on site. You're going to end up having bad reviews because you have that guy, that MMA guy standing at the door that just grunts at people and doesn't know how to talk to people, doesn't know how to interact with people. Doesn't have that humor, doesn't have that customer service feel. You're going to get people that don't want to come to your venue. Or if you have people to rush to judgment or have that ego and that mentality of, oh, you either stop drinking right now or you stop talking loud or you stop hitting on this girl, I'm going to throw you out and grab them and take them out the door. That's a black mark on your venue. And again, you have the criminal and the administrative and the civil liability that can follow you if you overlook these practices. But I think at the end of the day, it's not just all of that. All of that is no-brainer. It's going to happen. You're going to get sued if you have a bad hire. But if you overlook it for a day-to-day operation, you're also going to impact the level of customer service that you have, because nobody's going to come. It's like Dalton said, nobody's going to come to a slaughterhouse, right? Nobody's going to come to your venue when people are fighting all over, or you have bad bartenders. My wife and I went to a restaurant last night here locally in Phoenix, and they're a brand new place, and I think their success got the better of them because they haven't hired enough people. And it goes back to your point earlier about the labor market drying up. Is there was one bartender behind the bar, and the bar was packed. And there was like 15, 20 people at the bar. We sat there for probably 20 minutes waiting for her to serve us. And we'd been there before, so we knew who she was. But even then, and that goes the same thing. You don't have the people, but you got to hire those right people. And the less cut. My point being, if you don't have the quality customer service, you don't have the person in place to do a high quality job to support the mission and the goal of your venue, you want people to come back. And if you don't have them, if you don't have that welcoming hand, that friendly face at the front door, or even walking around at the bathrooms or standing at the dance floor or whatever, it's a black mark on you, and it's something that's going to hurt you in the long run.
Yeah, I think definitely the customer service aspect of hiring somebody is very important. One of the things that we preach often and loudly is your security operation should add to a guest experience. It shouldn't take away from it. And that's one of the things that we try to emphasize in our trainings. The other thing is, I think sometimes we get stuck with the idea that having a lot of experience is the candidate we want. And I think sometimes it's good to think the other way. A lack of experience is also good, because then we can take that guard and mold them into the way we do things rather than the way they used to do things or the way that they're used to doing things, I think is an important point. And the other thing I wanted to mention was, this is not a static one and done thing that we hire somebody and the job is done. I think too often in hospitality, there's a lack of team development. And what I mean by that is, when I would assemble teams or be in charge of teams, and it didn't necessarily have to be in security, but one of the things that I like to do is I would rank my team members on a regular basis. And it was normally on the criteria of how much I liked working with them, how much our team liked working with them, how much the guests liked that person, and what was their technical ability. Those would be the 4 sectors I would rate an individual. And then you have scores of 1 to 40 for all these people and for your roster, and you see who rises to the top and who's at the bottom. So then the question is, okay, what do I need to do to keep my A team, the top third, happy? What do I need to do to my B team, that middle third of individuals, to get them to be better? And on my C team, can I rehabilitate those people? Or if not, then I need to look to replace them. And that was also, that was a constant focus and journey, was that team development. And if more managers would take that approach to both the hiring practice and working with your team and developing your team, over time, you get better and better and better. And eventually you'll get to a point to where you have a really strong team with minimal headaches that can get the job done and get the job done safely. So I think that's important for operators to think about. So Rick, I also wanted to ask you, and this is an important question, I think it probably would help a lot of operators. How do we find the right candidate for a security position?
So there's a lot of things to consider. The number one recommendation I would always throw out to anybody, and you mentioned it earlier, hire a woman. That's just the first thing I'd mention, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But generally speaking, hiring the right guards, again, having a process in place. What is your mission? What are your goals with your security team? And I second your thoughts on team development. My love in life is leadership development. That's my specialty through my Ph.D. program, and I love leadership. I love leader development, and you really focus on developing people and not just training people to serve drinks or to stand at the door and check IDs. Sure, anybody can develop those skills. It's the development of the person and their behaviors and how they operate, how they interact are really, really important. So hiring for those standards, again, I think it really comes down to what the research has clearly said to us. And again, HR is hard. Everybody understands that. And you know what? You don't have an HR person in your bar, especially if you're a smaller venue, and you're just trying to hire these folks ad hoc. Understand what the research says here is new hires want to feel like they're important to the organization. Make them feel important, especially this generation today. The generation that we have coming out in the workforce today or in the labor market now, they generally don't care about money. Now, it's not the highest factor. Now, money is important, and I would say especially a security guard, because the things they have to deal with, and we'll get to that in a second. But they want to contribute in a meaningful way. What does that look like? How do you do that? I think in your team development model and even the leadership development model in general is to find out why they're there. Why are they applying for this job? That would be the first question I would ask. So when you're trying to bring these people in, how do you hire for that right person? Well, why are you here? What are you looking to do? Whatever it is, I need to make some money, or I enjoy working in a bar, or I'm a late person, or I like dealing with people, whatever the case may be. Build into that, work into that, and try to find the kind of person that you can talk to and they're easily talked to, and they can deal with people and have that communication. You have hopes of developing them because you want to find out what's meaningful to them. That's what matters most to them according to the research. Treat these people like human beings. They aren't just assembly line workers. I don't care if it's your bartender. I don't care if it's your server. I don't care if it's the DJ. I don't care who it is working in the back, whatever the case may be. But security guards in particular, in our space, in our venue, and what we're talking about here, is we need to treat them like human beings. They aren't just people to stand at the front door, hire them big, hire them good looking, have them stand at the front door and just look mean all day long. That's not their job. That's not what their role is. Their job is to welcome people in, screen people from coming in so they don't cause problems in your venue, deal with problems as they go. And again, the current generation doesn't care about money, but it is important. It's not the most important thing. But you know what? the problem in the labor market today is people don't want to pay people for what they deserve to get paid. And Robert, you and I have all had this conversation, and I know we've had it with many clients, is if you don't pay your people, your security guards well, you're not going to get the quality people that you're looking for. That's just the real talk of the world. And while money is not the most important thing, the meaningfulness is important as well. You got to pay them what they're worth. These guys and gals do a dangerous job. They deserve to be compensated for being vigilant and protecting customers and your business from both crime and civil actions, because that's what they do. They are the cops of your venue. Police officers get paid a lot of money, not as much as I think they deserve, and I can say that because I was in the job, but they have a dangerous job. But bouncers, and the research has shown this, bouncers, security guards that work in nightclubs and bars and hospitality venues, on average, actually face more incidents of violence on a daily basis than a police officer does. So why in the hell would I come to your bar and work if I know it's a slaughterhouse and you're not going to pay me, more than $15 an hour? That's just, I'm not putting my life on the line for that. So you got to balance that whole thing. So to answer your question, Manny, I think there's a lot of things you really need to consider, but number one, first and foremost, is what's meaningful to this person, what the kind of person you're looking for. Look for that customer service feel. Look for that. What do they want to get out of this job? Why are they here? Treat them like they're people. Treat them like they're a human being, and they're trying to fill a role to help your organization protect people from themselves or others in crime and other civil actions that can happen. But make it them the kind of person you want to be able to hire to make your business and your venue a better place to be a patron at.
Yeah, I think that, as you were talking, it reminded me of my interview process and just the way I would interview candidates. And I would really kind of spend some time to peel back the layers of that onion to figure out what this person was about. And it gave me a better sense of, okay, if I hire this candidate, one, are they a good candidate? Two, are they going to fit with the team? And once they're on the team, then how do I motivate that individual to perform the way that I want them to perform? And I think it really is a big responsibility for managers, and managers really have to pay attention to that, because I think there's a misconception that just because I gave you a job, now you owe me. And I think that's the wrong attitude to have with staff, especially with the generation, like you said, people coming into the workforce now. There's a little bit more of a equal footing, a back and forth that has to happen to make that person feel comfortable. And so, you mentioned nobody wants to come to a slaughterhouse, roadhouse, but also at the same time, nobody wants to work at a slaughterhouse. So it's the overall success and development of that security team that will lead to further success, right? If you have a good operation and people know about it around town and you're a better place to work for, people will come seek you out. Another thing that I would often do when I was in operations was I spent quite a bit of time at competitors' locations finding people who I think would fit well into my team, my organization. And so actively going out there and recruiting, I think, is something that good managers do. They're looking, how can I build a better team? How can I develop them to a higher standard? And part of that includes scouting and recruiting. And some people frown upon that, call it poaching. But I actually think, if I can offer this person a better opportunity, possibly better pay, better benefits, a happier work environment, then I'm doing that person a favor and a service by bringing them into a better workplace. One other thing that I wanted to mention that I think a lot of managers in operations, hospitality operations, don't think about is the hierarchy and the chain of command in hiring. And what I mean by that is, if I have a security supervisor who is going to be in charge of a team, it's important for that security supervisor who's in charge of that team to actually do the hiring. And it's a very subtle psychological thing to do. But if that security supervisor does the direct hiring, offers them the job, gets them onboarded, welcomes them for the first time as a primary contact, in a sense, that employee, that team member now belongs to that supervisor. Versus if I was the general manager And because my ego tells me I have to hire everybody, I was to do the hiring, then subconsciously that employee is now beholden to the general manager. So what ends up happening once you hire that person is there becomes a leapfrog, right? I don't go directly to my supervisor whenever I have issue or need assistance. I leapfrog that person and go to, say, the general manager. So I think it's a subtle thing, but I think it's important for people to think about. To me, it proved very fruitful to allow my supervisors and my other managers to do their own team building, because then it created a better environment and it maintained the chain of command. Rick, did you have any other points? I mean, we've covered quite a bit here. Did you have any other points you wanted to hit before we let the listener go when it comes to hiring and hiring practices?
Just a couple things, Manny. I want to circle back on one point that we made, and we've talked about it twice now, is hiring women. I go back to the research because I'm an academic guy, right? I love research. I think that it's foundational to build evidence-based practices into this, and there's evidence-based practices to hiring and training as well. So let's talk about one of them, which is hiring women. Research has shown, especially in law enforcement, specifically in law enforcement, that hiring women in this role, in a enforcement or public safety role, because that's what security guards do. They're in a public safety role. There's fewer issues of use of force. There's fewer excessive force complaints when women are involved in the situation. There's fewer lawsuits. There's less ego, and generally overall better customer service. And I think that's the key too, is all those things we mentioned are all the things we talked about early on, the consequences, the two sides of the coin, right? You hire that good guard, that person that we want in the venue, doing the job, welcoming people in, checking IDs properly, escorting people out when they need to, following policy and procedure, reporting to the proper management, letting management know of incidents, reporting incidents, those types of things. But when we hire the right person to do that job, you have that great customer service. You have the venue that people want to come to. And then on the flip side, you don't hire the right person. They use excessive force. They have that ego where they just stand there, don't talk to people. You're going to end up with criminal, administrative, and civil liability against you and your venue. By hiring the right security team members who can deliver high impact customer service is the most critical really thing to think about. That's one of the key takeaways I would say we should really consider from our chat today. I see that over and over again from venues. I've seen it over the years working with Robert and with you. It really comes down to customer service. There's a lot of venues that do it right. Like you talked about a minute ago, whether you poach or go site visits and take a look at what other people are doing, there's a lot of venues out there that get it right. They're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but they go out of their way to hire, retain, and pay their people in the right way and develop them into a quality team that does the job that they're supposed to be doing to support the mission of the organization, which I know I'm speaking in mission and those types of things. And that's how you have to think about this from a business perspective, because that's what this is. That's why HR is so important. In every business, you look at any article, any research, anything out there talking about business practices 101. Hiring and HR processes are so critical. And there's a lot of best practices out there on how to screen people, on having screening processes in place. And we can certainly help with that. So if anybody has any questions or wants to know where we can find some of those practices, we're happy to give those. I've got them on demand here. I've got them on my computer screen. I'm looking at them. There's a lot of organizations out there, security focused. ASIS International is one of them, and I'm a member of, that's security management focused, that actually develops best practices for hiring, pre-screening, and retention of security guards. And a lot of these best practices come out of there. But our hospitality venues are a little bit different, but they still need to think with the same mindset. They need to have a strategy, an overall security strategy first and foremost, but a strategy that starts with hiring the right guard and having them trained properly, and then through the operational workflow as they come on board, as they retain them, as they hire new people, as they work together as a team to do the job to keep people coming back to your venue, because that's what's important.
I'm glad you reemphasized the importance of thinking about women being in the role of security. I loved having women on our security team. It brings a different dynamic. For the obvious reasons, I could send them in to inspect the women's restroom. If a pat down had to happen on a woman, We have a woman on staff to do that. And overall, they just bring a different energy to tense situations, which, oftentimes they can diffuse much better than the male or their male counterparts. I'd like to emphasize the importance of retaining people. If you have good people on your team, your number one priority should be keep these people happy. Keep them on your side. Keep them working for you and not looking for something elsewhere. Because I think we don't think about those things enough in hospitality management, and just making sure you're really dedicated to your team and maintaining a quality roster of employees. Rick, just want to thank you for joining us today on the podcast and being with us and calling into the studio. We really appreciate your insight and the great information that you're able to share with us and the listeners. Thank you for being here.
Of course, it's my pleasure. Looking forward to another one.
Yeah, we'll be back on the line soon. We have a lot of topics out there in front of us that we can discuss and that we'd like to present to our listening audience. For those of you listening, thank you for joining us today on the Nightlife Security Podcast. We do appreciate you spending time with us. Just remember, first and foremost, Nightlife Security Consultants is a resource first and foremost. If there's questions you have, reach out to us. You can reach out to us through our website. Also, my email is manny@nightclubsecurity.com. We look forward to hearing from you, and be safe. See you next time, folks. Hey, listeners, before we go, I just wanted to thank you for spending the time today with us, listening in on the conversation. If you want to learn more about what we do and how we can help your venue achieve your security goals as far as operations goes, visit us at nightclubsecurity.com. You're going to find a whole bunch of free resources, anything to do with hospitality security, as well as our online training programs we have to offer. If there's any sort of questions, comments, the things you'd like to ask us, feel free to send me an email. My email address is Manny, MANNY, @nightclubsecurity.com. We would love to hear from you. And until next time, this is Manny Marquez thanking you for listening. And until then, be safe.